Want to speed up your language learning? Get access to all of our best PDF cheat sheets for free. Just click the link in the description and sign up for your free lifetime account right now.
Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about phrasal verbs that use go. So remember, a phrasal verb is a verb plus a preposition and then sometimes something extra. So today I'm going to introduce a few common phrasal verbs with go that maybe you haven't heard of. There are quite a lot with this verb, so I want to introduce some that hopefully you can use right away. Let's get started. Okay, the first phrasal verb I want to talk about is go ahead. Go ahead. This means permission or encouragement to do something before others. So I've noticed on this channel, for example, many viewers like to use go ahead, but they mean please continue. Go ahead does not have the meaning of please continue something. It means feel free to do something before me. So an example of using go ahead might be go ahead and eat. For example, I'm going to be home late today. Go ahead and eat dinner. So go ahead means before me. So go ahead and do something. We'll follow go ahead oftentimes with and. Go ahead of me and do something. Some verb will follow this. So in this case, go ahead and eat is a very common way that we use this one. Okay, let's move along to the next phrasal verb, which is go along with. To go along with something means to temporarily means for a short time only, to temporarily believe something that may be false. So here I put may be false. This could be a story, it could be a plan, it could be like just the way that someone is behaving. But this means to temporarily believe. So yes, temporarily can be a very short time, but this could be over weeks, months, or years. So it's something that perhaps has an end point at some point in time. That doesn't have to be very soon, but you temporarily believe or you pretend to believe something. Here's an example. I don't want to go along with this plan. I don't want to go along with this plan. So here there's a noun phrase. I don't want to go along with this plan means I don't want to pretend this plan is okay. So kind of the feeling here of to go along with something is that you're believing it and you're like pretending that you're agreeing with that thing or you're participating in that thing. So to go along with something, it can have a negative meaning. It can also have kind of like a positive feeling, like for example, a surprise birthday party. Like we need her to go along with the idea that she's not meeting her friends today, for example. Like we need her to temporarily believe she's not meeting her friends. But it can have a negative feeling, like here, I don't want to go along with this plan. Maybe the plan is bad or the plan is kind of evil somehow. So to go along with something is to believe something or to like continue doing something, to pretend to agree with something that may not be true. Okay, so let's continue on to the next phrasal verb. The next phrasal verb is to go around. To go around. This has two meanings actually. The first is to be enough for a group, to be enough for a group. The second one is one that you probably or maybe already know, which is to move past something by moving around it. So there's some obstacle that you face and you move around that obstacle. So that one is probably a little easier to understand, moving around physically an obstacle in order to pass the obstacle. However, the one I want to focus on for this lesson is this one, to be enough for a group, to go around. So in an example sentence, do we have drinks to go around? So here, do we have drinks to go around as a question means, do we have enough drinks for all the people in our group? So go around is a shorter way to say that. So you can imagine if you have a group of people in a circle, you can like give each person one of something. So that means to go around. There's enough of something to go around. You will sometimes hear people include enough in a phrase like this. do we have enough drinks to go around? So this refers to having enough of something for everyone in a group. Okay, let's move along to the next expression. The next phrasal verb is go away, go away. This is probably one that many of you know. To go away is often used as a command without the to, just go away, command form. So it means to move away from the current location, like to move away from the whiteboard, for example, or to move away from the camera. So you're moving away from something. So you're not getting closer. It's the opposite direction. But like I said, we often use it as commands. So to tell someone to go away, to tell a pet to go away. Another example, I wish these bugs would go away. I wish these bugs would go away. So in other words, go away from me. Go away from me, from the speaker. So when we say go away, and it doesn't have this kind of like reference point, it tends to mean like from the speaker's location. So I wish these bugs would go away from me. Okay, let's move along to the next phrasal verb. The next one is go back or go back to. So you'll see these both used. So to go back to something, let's use that. To go back to something means to return to a previous location. Or you can use it for a phase, like a step in a project, or you can use it for a person. To go back to a person. To go back to a certain phase of your project, to go back to a place. So we use this when we've made progress in some way or we've changed our life in some way and we return to something that we did earlier or we return to a person that we associated with earlier. When we use this expression to talk about people, it's often because we're talking about a romantic relationship. Like for example, he went back to his ex-girlfriend. Or she went back to her former boss, for example. So there's something that like we knew in the past, we knew was true about the person in the past, and they returned to that point. So we can use go back to refer to that. More commonly, perhaps, though, is when we just want to return to something we saw earlier. For example, go back to slide 2, please. So if you're giving a presentation, you could say, go back to slide 2. Please return to slide 2. So everyone saw slide 2. I, the speaker, the presenter, want to return to that slide for some reason. So go back to something is to return to something. Okay, let's move along to another one that's very similar. So we talked about go back or go back to. Now let's look at go back on. So to go back on something is to choose not to do something as promised. So we tend to use this expression with promises or agreements of some kind. So to go back on a promise means you make the promise and then your actions do not align with the promise. So in an example sentence, the president went back on his promises. So to go back on his promises. This means the president made a promise and the president's actions did not match that promise. So for example, the president of the company said he would give all employees their birthday off. And then the president decided not to do that in the end. So he made a choice, he or she made a choice not to make that birthday policy happen. So that would be an example of the president going back on his promise. So choosing not to do a thing that you promised to do. In some cases, people will do the opposite of what they promised to do. We can use that as well. So to go back on and to go back to are quite different. Keep in mind, to go back on always sounds quite negative. To go back to doesn't necessarily sound negative. It can, depending on what is being returned to. Like if a person is going back to a negative relationship, for example, it could feel negative. But to go back on does have that negative feeling of like betrayal. Okay, so let's continue on to the next phrasal verb, which is go for, to go for something. To go for something means to try to obtain something or someone, to try to get something or to try to get someone. So when I say to get someone here, this can mean like to get someone as like a boyfriend or a girlfriend, Or it can mean to try to get someone to participate in something. So you want someone to join like a party or a conference or something similar. You can use this expression in that case. So let's look at an example. She's going for the gold medal. So very common in the Olympics and sporting events in general. She's going for. Here I have the progressive tense. She's going for. That means she's trying to get the gold medal. She's going for the gold is also a way that we say this. So in this case, it's an object. If you want to use it to talk about a person, you could say like, oh, I tried to go for that girl or that guy across the room, but he or she wasn't interested, for example. So you're trying to get or you're trying to attract a person. Okay, let's move along to the next one, which is go in on, to go in on something. Careful, go back on and go in on are quite different. Go in on something. To go in on something means to become one of a group of people investing in something. So investing, in many cases, this means investing money in something, in probably most cases with this expression. So you and some other people have decided you all want the same thing, and you invest your resources in that thing. An example, I went in on a shared office. So here we have past tense, I went in on a shared office. So shared office is the thing that each person wants in this group. We don't know how many people, but we use I went in on. This shows us that there are other people who want the same thing, though we don't have to mention the other people. I went in on a shared office. So I invested money, perhaps time, effort, resources, in order to get this shared office with other people. So to go in on something, it does have kind of a cooperative feeling about it. It's neither positive nor negative, really. Okay, on to the next one. The next one is go off. To go off. So to go off, when you're talking about people, to go off means to lose your temper. It means like to shout or to yell angrily. To go off. You'll also hear when something goes off, it could be like an alarm, like the alarm went off this morning. So it has kind of the same feel though. Like when a person goes off, they lose their temper, they shout, they scream. When an alarm goes off, it makes a lot of noise. So you can imagine it's sort of like an object losing its temper or an object making a lot of noise as well. So we can use this for a few objects, but we use it a lot for people's tempers as well, their emotions. Example, a guy went off at a cop. So here you'll see, yes, I've used it in the past tense, a guy went off at a cop. We can use at after this to show the recipient of the anger. So in this case, a cop. So cop is slang for a police officer. So a guy went off, lost his temper at a police officer. I've used at here. You will also hear on. Like my mom went off on me is another common one, or my mom went off at me. You might hear both of those. I think I probably use on more often, but you may hear at as well. So to go off on someone means to lose your temper with someone. Okay, on to the next one. The next one is to go out, to go out. So to go out means just to leave your home, to leave your home. So this can be used, I feel, positively to refer to doing activities outside of your house. It's like you're going to do something fun. For example, why don't we go out tonight? Why don't we go out tonight? So this is one that you can use when you're thinking about like planning activities. So let's go out, or we went out to a movie last night, for example. So to go out sounds like you're out and about doing things. Okay, let's move on to the next one then. The next one is the expression go together, to go together. So yes, this does mean to physically go to another location with someone. Like let's go together, let's go to the movies together. But this also has the meaning of suiting, like to suit or to combine well, to suit or to combine well. So we use this a lot for clothing actually. So a really common example sentence with clothing, do these shoes and this shirt go together? So the speaker here is asking about two things: a pair of shoes, these shoes, the plural, and this shirt. So the speaker is asking, do these two sort of parts, to my look, go together? So one point to be careful about: go together does not mean match. So to match means two things are exactly the same, 100% the same. To go together means they combine well. They combine nicely. They look good together. So you'll often hear people actually drop this together. People will sometimes say, like, do these shoes and this shirt go? Do they go? Instead of go together. So when we say go in this way, it means do they suit each other? Like, do they combine nicely? So we use this a lot for talking about our clothes and for our appearance. So keep an eye out for this one. It's quite common. Okay, let's move on to the next one: to go with something or to go with someone. To go with or to go, to go with something, to go with someone means to choose. To choose. We use this a lot in restaurants and kind of in any situation where we're making plans. Like, for example, I'm going to go with the steak. I'm going to go with the steak. So here I have go with followed by the object the speaker chooses. I'm going to go with the steak. So I chose the steak, or I choose the steak. If you're using this to talk about a person, you might be planning something, like you're planning a team. Like, I'm going to go with person A for this role in my company, or this role at the event. I'm going to go with person B for this role. So when you're choosing people, or maybe you're choosing teams for something, you could use go with. It sounds kind of like a casual way of choosing someone. Instead of choose, like I choose this person, I choose that person, using go with sounds a little bit lighter, a little less formal. Okay, so let's continue to the last one in this list, which is go without, to go without. So to go without something means to do something without typical items or typical people. So there's some like common task, some kind of well-known task or well-known activity, but you have to do that thing without something that you usually use. So an example, I had to go without rain gear for my hike. So imagine it's a rainy day and the speaker had to go on this hike, but without his or her rain gear, with no rain gear, without using this thing that he or she usually uses. So to go without something, this does have a negative nuance, that this thing that I need or this thing that I prefer to have, that it's common to have, I did not have that for a task or an activity that I was doing. So to go without something. In another example, like maybe I could say, I had to go without a microphone for this lesson. Like it would maybe make it less of a good experience. The experience would not be as good, or it would be difficult to do things. So to go without something does tend to sound a little bit more negative. Okay, so this is a lot of information, I know, but this is just a quick introduction to some phrasal verbs that use the word go. If you have any other questions, or if you want to know some more about other phrasal verbs that use go, I would highly recommend checking a dictionary. There are a lot of words, a lot of expressions that use go. So please take a look at a dictionary for some more information and some more example sentences as well. Of course, if you have questions or comments, or if you want to practice making an example sentence, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you like this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alicia, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. Let's get to your first question this week. First question this week comes from Henrique. Hi Henrique. Henrique says, how do we use at in and on correctly. Thank you. Okay, very quickly, because there are videos on the channel about how to use prepositions, so please do a search and check them out. Very quickly to review, let's begin with at. We use at to mark specific locations in cities. That means like buildings. So for example, I'm at the bank, or she's at the supermarket. We can also use at to refer to specific locations outside cities, like in the countryside, like we're at the river today. We also use at before times to mark specific times of day, like let's meet at 2 p.m. or she arrived at 3:30. We also use at with night, as in at night. Please note we do not use at with morning or afternoon or evening. Those are incorrect. We only use it with at night. Then let's talk about in. We use in before the names of cities and countries, like she lives in Switzerland, or he lives in Barcelona, or it's in Toronto. So we use it before city names and country names. We can also use in before a length of time to mark a duration, like let's meet in 10 minutes, or we finished the project in 1 hour. We also use in with months. For example, she moved in February, or I'm going to Europe in June. Finally, let's talk about on. We use on with days of the week and to talk about the weekend, as in something we did on the weekend. In some variations of English, you may hear people saying at the weekend, but this is not used in American English. We use on the weekend. So we use on before days of the week, as in, let's meet on Tuesday, or we had coffee together on Saturday. So this is a very quick introduction to different ways to use at, in, and on. As I said, please do a quick search of the channel for prepositions to find other videos with more details about this topic. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Next question comes from Nazanin. Hello, Nazanin. Nazanin says, hi, Alicia. What is the difference between park and garden? Thank you. A park is generally a big open area with lots of grass. You can come to a park and you can do like a variety of different activities. If you want to have a picnic or a barbecue, or you want to maybe play a sport or something like that, you can generally do that in a park. There's a lot of really big open space. So maybe we can show a picture on screen here so you can see what a park, a typical park, looks like. A garden, on the other hand, is something that's supposed to be enjoyed for its design. And when I say design, I mean like the landscape design, like maybe there are special flowers inside the garden, or there's maybe special decorations. There's some kind of like landscape that is special in the garden. So you might see parks and gardens like together. There might be a garden inside a park, but a garden is generally not a place that you go to do a specific activity. Like we don't go to a garden to have a barbecue, or we don't go to a garden to play a sport generally. We go to a garden to enjoy the scenery, to enjoy being in the garden, like walking along the paths in the garden. So parks are generally more open spaces where we can do a variety of activities. Gardens are spaces that we use for enjoyment of that natural space. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Sumitha Aaron. Hello, Sumitha. Sumitha says, I would like to know the difference between resume and curriculum vitae. Okay, they are very, very similar. A curriculum vitae, or CV, as it is often called, these are very, very similar documents. We use both of them to apply for jobs. So a CV is generally longer than a resume, maybe like 3 to 4 pages, and it includes everything you have ever done, all of your professional experience, so that's like your work experience, and your education experience, yes, so where you went to school, the degrees that you have, the topics that you studied, and so on. But we also, on a CV, include our credentials, our certification. So if you got some kind of special recognition, if you got a scholarship, a grant, if you've published anything, like a book or a paper, or if you have a thesis somewhere, if you've given a presentation, basically anything connected to your work and your professional experience will be listed on a CV. So a CV is like a very long list of all of your achievements, all of your professional and your educational achievements. These are kind of longer documents. A resume, on the other hand, is generally a little bit shorter. It's maybe like 1 to 2 pages long, and it's kind of more of a summary. So in addition to including like your contact information, you might have a short career objective. Like that means the thing that you are trying to do in your career. You might have that. And then generally with a resume, you have a series of summaries of your past work. So maybe you have 3 or 4 companies or 3 or 4 positions on your resume, and you summarize your accomplishments and your role in each of those positions so that someone has a good idea, has like a good image of what kind of work you have done and therefore how it connects to your current objective. So again, a resume tends to be a bit shorter than a CV, maybe 1 to 2 pages, but a CV like could be maybe 3 to 4 pages if you have a long work history. In the UK, you might find that nobody actually uses the word resume. So if you're speaking with a British English speaker, they might only use the word CV. CV generally refers to the same concept as a resume. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Siam. Hello, Siam. Siam says, what's the difference between not and no? I'll give a very general answer to this question. We use not and no to give negative responses to things. The grammar of the sentence is what's important here. So we use not before adjectives and verbs. For example, I am not hungry, or she's not sleeping, or they do not work on Saturdays. So this comes before adjectives or verbs. No, of course, is also used to respond to yes or no questions with the negative answer. You may also hear not used in kind of a sarcastic way to reply to someone's opinion or to respond to someone's opinion. For example, person A might say, "Oh, I really liked that movie," and person B might respond with, "Yeah, me too." Not. So this is kind of an old style humor. It's actually not very funny, but some people try to use this not to show contrast to the thing that they just said. So this really means, I'm going to pretend that I agree with you for a moment, but I don't really. So you might hear some people use not in this way too. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Next question comes from Arkan Git. Hello, Arkan. Arkan says, what's the difference between police station and police department? Nice question. Yeah, a police station is a building. It's a physical place that we can visit, so people work inside a police station. A police department, on the other hand, is a part of an organization. So the police department refers to a group of people working together to do police work. This is the same as like a marketing department in a company or as like a sales department in an online store. It refers to a group of people that are doing the same type of work, a police department. So a police department refers to that group of people. The police station refers to the physical building where police officers are located. So in sentences, you might say something like, I went to the police station to file a report about my lost wallet. Or, the police department is working to reduce crime in our city. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, that is everything that I have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending your questions. Remember, you can send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. Of course, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check us out at englishclass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Ask Alicia, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about using the past perfect tense. I'm also going to talk about using the past perfect progressive or past perfect continuous tense. Let's get started. Okay, first, let's take a look at the past perfect. How to make the past perfect. This is a very quick introduction to making a past perfect statement. So, when we make past perfect, we use had for positive statements, or had not for negative statements. Then we add the past participle form of a verb. So we'll use this in a few example sentences. So we use the past perfect tense in a few different situations. The first two, I feel, are probably some of the more common ways to use them. Let's look here first. We use past perfect tense, one, to show a past action that happened before another past action. So, to kind of visualize this, I want to look at this part right here on my timeline. I have a timeline that goes from the past here to the present now and up to the future. So here, in this part, I want to look here for this number one of past perfect. When we want to express that two things happened in the past, one action happened before another action, we can use the past perfect tense to show the action that happened further in the past, and simple past tense to show the action that started more recently, or that happened more recently rather. So let's look at an example. He hadn't contacted me for weeks. Then, suddenly, he invited me for coffee. So here we see hadn't contacted. This is the negative form of the past perfect tense. Hadn't is the contracted form of had not. Contacted is my past participle verb. He hadn't contacted me for weeks. So this is my past perfect situation. So this is the first point. Hadn't contacted me for weeks. This is the situation. Then, suddenly, he invited me. So this is a simple past tense comment. He invited me for coffee. So my simple past thing happened next. So we can show this progression of actions here. In some cases, when it's very clear, like if the writer or the speaker uses before or after, we don't always need to be so strict with using past perfect and simple past tense. But sometimes, especially when writing stories, this is very useful for showing the order of actions in sentences. Okay, so let's continue to the second point with past perfect tense. We use past perfect to express something that started in the past and continued to another point in the past. So, to kind of imagine this, let's look at this part of the timeline here. So again, we're in the past. We have something that started in the past and continued, but also it ended in the past as well. So it does not continue to the present, which would be the present perfect tense, but it continued to a point in the past and stopped there. So an example sentence with this. When I got my current job, I had lived in New York for 4 years. So here we see again, had lived is our past perfect tense. In this case, I'm using the positive form, had and lived. I had lived in New York for 4 years. So this is my continuing action, the thing that was that began in the past and continued to a point in the past. So I have, again, simple past tense here. When I got my current job, this part shows us where this action kind of stops. So when I got my current job, I had lived in New York for 4 years. So this point on the timeline is where the speaker began living in New York, the point in time. The speaker lived in New York, and the person got their job. Now, in this case, it doesn't mean that the speaker stopped living in New York. We don't know. But the speaker wants to say at this point in time. So even though the action doesn't always stop, it's like there's some kind of key point, some information here that we want to note. So this is an example of that. So a continuing action and then a key point in the past that maybe stops the action or that we just want, like, kind of mark some importance for us. Okay, so finally, let's move to the third point for using past perfect. We use past perfect to talk about unreal situations in the past. You might see this used with things like would have, could have, and should have. So an example of this, I would have helped you plan the surprise party if I had known about it. If I had known about it. This use of the past perfect tense shows us the speaker did not know about it in the past. So this is an unreal situation. If I had. To visualize this, again, we're in the past. Here's something, I've used a dotted line here to show it's not real. So there's something back here in the past that did not happen, but that we want to reference now. We want to talk about it now. So if in the past I had known, so I did not know, but if I had known, I would have helped you plan. So this is an unreal situation. We can use past perfect for all of these. So let's compare this then to the progressive or the continuous use of past perfect. When we make the progressive or continuous form, we use had, yes, and had not in the negative. Then we add been plus the progressive form of a verb. So we use this, one, to show actions that continue in the past until a point in the past. So yes, this is very similar to this past perfect use that I talked about, but we often use this to express like an interrupted action, an action that was stopped by another action. So this means, for example, in this example sentence, I had been studying for an hour when my mom got home. So this is an interrupted action, or there's some kind of change in the situation. Everything happens in the past, though. So here, had been studying is my past perfect progressive tense. This is the continuing action. On my timeline here, it's in blue. My continuing action in the past. I had been studying for an hour, so this action continued for an hour, was continuing for an hour. Then the sentence says, when my mom got home. So when here marks the point where the action changes or the situation changes or is interrupted. So here, I've marked in red with this X, is the interruption. When my mom got home. We use simple past tense to describe the interrupting action, the thing that stopped or changed the continuing action. So I had been studying for an hour, past perfect progressive, when my mom got home, simple past tense. So we use this to talk about actions that were interrupted in the past. We can also use this is kind of like 1.5, point number 1.5 or 2, I guess, for today. We can also use this to talk just about actions that didn't necessarily change or get interrupted, but we want to talk about something that was continuing, and then we kind of, from the context, from the conversation, we understand when it stopped. So a great example of this is a sentence like this. We were exhausted because we'd been working all night. So here you can see there's not really a change. Like there's not really a point where there's an interruption or something stops or something new happens. In this case, we're just kind of making two past tense statements, similar to what I talked about in point 1 over here. But we want to emphasize a continuing action. So here I have past tense. We were exhausted. We were exhausted. Exhausted means very tired. We were exhausted because we'd, this part, please be careful, a good note here, we were exhausted because we'd been working all night. So this working action had continued all night long. We want to emphasize that. And then after that, we were exhausted. But there's not a change there. It's like the speaker is telling a story, maybe. So we were exhausted because we've been working all night. When we got home, we found out we didn't have our keys. So you might see a sentence like this in a story. So it's not, like I said, a specific point where a change occurs, but we kind of understand from the story or from the situation what's happening. So you'll see this continuous or the progressive form used quite commonly in these kinds of situations. So this is a quick introduction to using the past perfect tense and the past perfect progressive tense. I hope that this helps you understand these two grammar points. If you have any questions or comments or want to practice making some sentences with this grammar, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, welcome back to Top Words. My name is Alicia, and in this lesson we're going to talk about 20 useful phrases you can use when talking to your doctor. Let's get started. Before we start, a quick reminder that you can find free PDF cheat sheets to download from the link in the description. You can find a bunch of different topics. You can use these to build your vocabulary. You can use them to find daily conversation expressions and a lot more. So have a look, check the link below the video. Okay, let's get to the lesson. I have an appointment today. I have an appointment today. When you arrive at the doctor's office, you can go to the reception desk or the person working there who's receiving people, and you can say, I have an appointment today. This means they should be expecting you. You can expect to give your name and maybe some other personal information after you say this. Okay, let's go to the next expression. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? This is a key question that your doctor will ask you. It's a question about your condition. They'll say, how are you feeling today? Or they might ask something like, what seems to be the problem? Or asking something else about your specific symptoms. So when your doctor says, how are you feeling today? You can explain you're feeling good or not so good, depending on what kind of checkup you're doing. You can express that something is painful or something doesn't feel quite right. There are many different ways to respond to this question, so that's up to you. Okay, on to the next phrase. Not very well. Not very well. So not very well is a very general way to respond to the question, how are you feeling today? When you say not very well, you should expect to provide more details. So why don't you feel very well? So this means that you just don't have a very good feeling about your body, about your condition. Okay, on to the next expression. I think I sprained my left ankle. I think I sprained my left ankle. Okay, so this is an example of a more specific way of explaining your condition. So in this case, a sprain is a type of sports injury, and we tend to see it around the ankles or maybe around the wrists too. So if you think that you know what type of injury you're experiencing, you can express that with something like this. I think I sprained my ankle in this case. Okay, let's go to another way to express your feeling. I feel a sharp pain in my right knee. I feel a sharp pain in my right knee. Okay, so this is another way that you can describe something that you're experiencing. If you're not sure about the type of injury, for example, but you want to express you are feeling pain, you can do it with something like this. Sharp pain is a knife-like pain. So you can use I feel a sharp pain in my plus the body part. In this case, your right knee. Of course, you can change that to any other body part to express that you're feeling sharp knife-like pain in that place. Okay, let's go to another example. My knee is aching. My knee is aching. Okay, so here we have a knee as our example place again, but in this case we're using ache. So aching refers to a kind of dull, low pain generally that doesn't go away. So when you say that something aches, it's different from a sharp pain, which we saw in the previous example, because a sharp pain is like a very strong knife-like pain. An ache is something that's kind of constant and low. So you can say, my body part is aching to mean that that's the feeling that it has now. Okay, let's go to the next expression. My throat hurts a little. My throat hurts a little. Okay, so most people have experienced a sore throat. So you can say, I have a sore throat. Or another way to say that is, my throat hurts a little. Of course, you can change throat to any other body part. My finger hurts a little, or my stomach hurts a little, to express that there's a little pain or a little discomfort in that body part. Okay, on to the next one. I have a terrible stomach ache. I have a terrible stomach ache. Okay, so if you have pain in your stomach, so you feel sick to your stomach, you can express that with stomach ache. So we talked about the word ache earlier, that kind of low, constant pain. We have that in our stomach sometimes when we eat something that we disagree with or when we have some kind of bacteria in our stomachs. So if you have a really, really bad one, if it's very, very uncomfortable, you can express that with a terrible stomach ache. I have a terrible stomach ache. Okay, next expression. I've lost my appetite. I've lost my appetite. Okay, This expression means you no longer want to eat food. Your appetite is how hungry you feel when you see food. So usually we want to eat a few times a day, right? But if you lose your appetite, it means you're no longer interested in food. So if you have this experience, you can tell your doctor this. You can say, I've lost my appetite. Okay, next expression. I have a rash on my arm. I have a rash on my arm. Okay, so a rash is a part of your skin that turns red or maybe even another color, and that's sometimes itchy or maybe kind of painful. So if you have one of these spots on your skin, you can express that with, I have a rash on my, plus the body part. So I have a rash on my arm, I have a rash on my neck, and so on. Okay, next expression. Do you have a cough? Do you have a cough? This is a question that will come from the doctor. So if they want to check your symptoms, they might ask, do you have a cough or do you have some other symptom? A cough refers to an uncomfortable feeling where you want to push the air out of your lungs, and this sound is called a cough. So your doctor might ask you, do you have a cough, to check your symptoms? Okay, next expression. I get tired very quickly. I get tired very quickly. Okay, so this expression refers to fatigue or a feeling of having no energy. If your doctor asks about your symptoms and you want to express that recently you don't have much energy, you can say, I feel tired very quickly. This helps the doctor understand that there's been a recent change in your energy levels. Okay, next expression. Does it hurt when I press here? Does it hurt when I press here? This is another question that will come from the doctor. During a physical examination, the doctor may touch parts of your body, and the doctor might ask you, does it hurt when I press here? Which means, do you feel pain when I press this spot on your body? So just answer yes or no to respond. Okay, next expression. Take this medicine and rest. Take this medicine and rest. This is an instruction from the doctor. After your examination, your doctor might tell you to take some medicine. So they might also tell you to get some rest. In this case, it's both. Take some medicine and rest. It means take the medicine the doctor is giving you and rest your body. Okay, next expression. You might need surgery. You might need surgery. Okay, so this is something that will come from the doctor after your physical examination. If your injury or your sickness cannot be treated just by using medicine, you might have to have an operation or surgery. So there are very simple surgeries and there are more complex surgeries. So it depends on your condition. But if the doctor thinks you may need something like this, they'll tell you with an expression like, you might need surgery. Okay, next expression. I need a medical certificate. I need a medical certificate. If you need a document that describes your health condition or your medical history, you can ask for one with this expression. I need a medical certificate. You might not have to ask your doctor specifically for this. In many cases, you can simply ask the reception desk for this information. Okay, next expression. I'd like to get a second opinion. I'd like to get a second opinion. Okay, this expression means I'd like to get a second doctor's opinion. So after your physical examination, if you're not sure about this doctor's conclusion, you might want to talk to another doctor and get their opinion about your condition. You can express that with, I'd like to get a second opinion. Okay, next expression. That's a relief. That's a relief. Okay, that's a relief is an expression that you can use when you feel relieved about the doctor's conclusion. If you thought you might have a serious illness, but the doctor says you just have a cold and it's no problem, you can express that feeling of relief with this expression. Oh, that's a relief, it's just a cold. Okay, next expression. Please come back next week for a checkup. Please come back next week for a checkup. This is an instruction you may receive from your doctor. So after your first examination, maybe you receive some medicine or you have some other kinds of care or treatment guidelines. Your doctor wants to check your condition again in a week. They will say something like this. Please come back next week for a checkup. Okay, next expression. Thank you, I will confirm the date of my visit. Thank you, I will confirm the date of my visit. All right, this is an expression that you would typically use if you are making a schedule for upcoming treatment or an upcoming doctor's appointment. You might say this on the phone or in person to someone if you need to check your schedule before you confirm something. Thanks, I need to confirm the date of my visit. All right, that brings us to the end of 20 useful phrases you can use when talking to your doctor. What did you think? You can let us know in the comments. And don't forget to click the link in the description to get your free PDF cheat sheets and learn even more useful English words and phrases. You can download them to any device or print them out. They're yours to keep, so click the link and get them for free. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time. Bye! Hi everyone, I'm Alicia. Welcome to Conversational Phrases. We've found that the best way to learn a language is to speak it from day one. And the best way to start speaking is to learn phrases that you'll use in real conversations. In this lesson, you'll learn conversational phrases to ask and answer the question, how do you say this? After watching this video, you'll be able to ask someone how a word is pronounced. And if you want to learn more vocabulary, phrases, and example sentences you can use in real-life situations, click the link in the description to download your How to Say Something PDF cheat sheet for free. Now, let's take a look at some conversational phrases.
Listen to the dialogue. How do you say this?
It's parking lot.
Listen to it again. How do you say this?
It's parking lot.
First of all, you'll need to learn how to say, how do you say this? That's, how do you say this? Listen to it again. How do you say this? How do you say this? Now, how do you answer this question? The pattern is
It's
word. For example, it's parking lot.
It's parking lot. It's parking lot.
Here are a few useful words you can use with the same pattern. Parking lot. Parking lot. Parking lot. Giraffe. 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 Travel. 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 Invasion. 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 Let's look at some examples. Listen and repeat or speak along with the native speakers. How do you say this? It's giraffe. How do you say this? It's travel. How do you say this? It's invasion. Okay, now it's your turn. Do you remember how to say, how do you say this? How do you say this? Imagine it's the word giraffe. Do you remember how to say giraffe? Giraffe. Giraffe. Say, it's giraffe. It's giraffe. Now answer the question saying, it's giraffe. How do you say this? It's giraffe. Now imagine the word is travel. Do you remember how to say travel? Travel. Travel. Say, it's travel. It's travel. Now, answer the question saying it's travel. How do you say this? It's travel. Now imagine the word is invasion. Do you remember how to say invasion? Invasion. Invasion. Say, it's invasion. It's invasion. Now answer the question saying it's invasion. How do you say this? It's invasion.
In this lesson, you learned new vocabulary and phrases you can use in your everyday life to ask someone how something is said. You are now able to ask how to say something like a native speaker. Start by practicing in the comments below. Tell us, which word do you think is the hardest to pronounce? Lastly, don't forget to click the link in the description and download your PDF cheat sheets. You'll get useful phrases you need for everyday life for free. See you in the next lesson. Bye! Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the differences between however, nevertheless, and despite. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the expression in spite of, too. So let's begin. The first one that I want to look at is the word however. However. Let's take a look at 3 different ways we can use however. First, however can mean on the other hand, or but. It's like a more formal way of saying but, something kind of more polite than just but. So let's look at a couple of examples of however used in this way. First example, I wanted to go to a movie. However, I stayed home and studied. One more, sorry, we don't have tea. We do, however, have coffee. Okay, so these 2 examples show how we use however to mean but. Like in this first example, it has the feeling of but. And in this one, the second example, it's more like on the other hand. So it's like another option is available. We also see that kind of the positioning of however, or the use changes, can shift a little bit. Here, we see that it's connecting these 2 ideas. I wanted to go to a movie, A. However, so even though there was this thing, I wanted to go to a movie, but I stayed home and studied. So we're connecting those 2 ideas there. It can have kind of the feel of even though, but not as much as some of the other things we're going to talk about later. In this sentence, you might be surprised at the positioning of however here. Sorry, we don't have tea. That's 1 point. We do, however, have coffee. So this is a pattern you might hear native speakers use. First, we use this do, we do. We use this to contrast, to give like a strong opposite to this negative don't. We don't have tea. We do have coffee. So this, however, is like on the other hand. So you could put this here, as I've done. We do, however, have coffee. You could put this before this comment. However, we do have coffee. That's also okay. So you might hear in an expression like this, you might hear the position of however shift a little bit. But these uses are on the other hand, or but. Let's move on to a totally different way of using however. We can use however to mean to whatever degree, or no matter how much, no matter how much. So first, let's look at some examples. However hard we tried, we couldn't stop him from smoking. And however badly we wanted to win, we couldn't beat the top team in our league. So these 2 uses of however could be replaced by this expression right here, no matter how much. So it doesn't matter how much something. For example, it doesn't matter how hard we tried, or in this case, past tense, it didn't matter how hard we tried, we couldn't stop him from smoking. So no matter what we did, it didn't matter how hard we tried, this was something we were unable to do. So this is a long expression. No matter how much is a long expression. However is much shorter. Same thing in the second sentence. However badly we wanted to win, again past tense, we couldn't beat the top team in our league. So no matter how much we wanted to win is another way to say this. So no matter how much might sound a little bit more casual. However, using however in this way sounds a little bit more formal. So if you want to express something in a more polite way, you could use however instead of no matter how much. So you'll see, however, you'll notice here, positioned at the beginning of these expressions. So it's like your no matter how much statement, however comes at the beginning of that. We don't see it at the end. Okay, so with that then, let's continue on to the last use of however. We use however to express surprise or shock. Like you might know the expression, how on earth? So I have here a question mark and an exclamation point. We can informally, we can use these two together to show like surprise and a question at the same time. So this is kind of a formal expression and it's a little uncommon. We don't use this so much. So when we want to express shock, oftentimes about like a negative situation or like a really surprising situation, we could use this. For example, however are we going to get home tonight? The car has been stolen. So this is a really shocking situation. Using however here, though, makes the speaker's shock sound rather formal. So I would say this is probably not like this is not kind of the first thing and most native speakers would say. I think today most native speakers would say, how are we going to get home? However, there are some cases where however could be used to express shock like this, like a really formal shock. However are we going to get home? You can think of this like, how on earth are we going to get home? So it really kind of elevates, it levels up that shock and surprise feeling. One more example. However did you find the answer to this question? So again, surprise, kind of shock. We really want to know, how on earth did you find the answer to this question? I'm really surprised. However did you find? So we use these two for polite shock, but again, it's fairly uncommon. This is not a pattern that I use very much. You might see this perhaps in like movies or TV from time to time, but again, not so common in everyday speech. So these are 3 ways to use however. With that in mind, let's move on to nevertheless. Nevertheless. So nevertheless basically means even though something else. So even though A, B is kind of the feel. Let's look at some examples first. We got lost driving in a new city. Nevertheless, we made it to the airport on time. And many said her dream project couldn't be done. Nevertheless, she continued working to achieve it. So in both of these sentences, we see nevertheless comes at the beginning of the second sentence. When we use nevertheless in this way, it means even though the thing previously said. So even though this thing in sentence 1. So A, nevertheless, comma, B is a very common pattern with nevertheless. Same thing here. Many said her dream project couldn't be done is our A statement. Nevertheless, so nevertheless meaning even though many said her dream project couldn't be done, she continued working to achieve it. So what's the difference? Why should I use nevertheless instead of even though? Nevertheless sounds a bit more formal than even though. If you want something to sound a little bit more serious, less casual, you could use nevertheless in a pattern like these. So we essentially keep the meaning of even though, we just make kind of a different sentence structure there. Okay, so with this in mind then, I want to go to despite, and then we'll compare these two. So despite, just like nevertheless, means even though, actually, yes. But when we use despite, we need to build different sentence structures. So let's look at the examples. First, I ran out of time to style my hair before an important meeting. Despite that, my presentation went well. One more. Despite the fact that she arrived late at the airport, she made it to the conference on time. So you might notice here, I'm not using despite alone. In my first example sentence, I'm using despite that. My second sentence, despite the fact that. This is a key difference between despite and nevertheless. When we use despite, we have to connect it to a noun phrase. When we use nevertheless, we do not. So this is the key difference between these two. So when I say connect despite to a noun phrase, I mean patterns like these, despite that, where that is your A statement. So despite that means the statement that came before. That means despite the fact I ran out of time to style my hair before an important meeting, so even though this happened, my presentation went well. That's what it means. So we have to use that, or maybe this as well. That could be okay, depending on your situation. So we have to use that. We cannot use just despite. We can't do that. We must include that noun phrase. So some common examples of that, as I said, despite that, or despite the fact that, as I've done here, or just despite A, B. So I don't have an example sentence here, but we could change one of these sentences to use just despite at the beginning of the sentence. So for example, despite my favorite donut shop being open every day, I didn't go this morning, for example. So you could make an example sentence, or you could make a sentence, an A statement here, and attach it directly to despite. But essentially, it has to be some kind of noun phrase. We need to use something in direct connection to despite here. So this is a key difference with nevertheless. So we always follow nevertheless, or I'm sorry, we always introduce our A point and then introduce nevertheless. So it's like A, nevertheless, B. It will always follow that pattern. So one more point I want to mention here is the very closely related in spite of, in spite of. So in spite of, we can actually use this to replace despite. They have the same meaning, the same function. Just be careful. We use in spite of as a phrase, as a set phrase, to mean despite. So for example, in spite of that, or in spite of the fact that, or in spite of A, B. So if you want to use in spite of, you can replace despite with in spite of. So to summarize all of this over here, nevertheless, we can think of nevertheless like despite that. Then we can think of despite as equal to in spite of. And we can think of nevertheless as in spite of that. So these are kind of the equivalents, the things that are equal to each other when we're using these words. So yes, they all mean even though. They have the same meaning, but it's just that the way we make the sentence is a little bit different. So I hope that this helps. I'll say too that I feel despite is a little more commonly used, despite that, or despite the fact that is a little more commonly used than nevertheless or in spite of. But actually everything is common, but I think the most common perhaps is despite from this group. Okay, so this is a quick introduction to however, nevertheless, and despite, and in spite of. If you have any questions or comments, or if there's something else you would like to know about this topic, please let us know in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you like this lesson, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about using should. I'm going to explain using should for the past and for the future. So I'm going to introduce how you make statements and questions for past tense use of should, and I'm going to talk about the same thing for future tense uses of should. So let's begin. I want to start this lesson by talking about the past tense version. When we use should in the past, in a positive statement, we do it to express regret. So regret means a sorry feeling or a sad feeling. So it expresses regret for something that did not happen. So this is a key point here. Yes, it's a positive statement, but we're talking about something that did not happen, and we feel sad about it. So to visualize this, I've created a timeline here with the past over here, now the present, our conversation, and future. So if you can imagine, when we make positive statements with should in the past tense, we can imagine it's something that did not happen. So it's before the present, before now, did not happen, and we feel sad about it. So when we want to make a sentence like this, we can use a pattern such as this one. This is a very basic pattern. We can use subject plus should plus have, and then the past participle form of a verb. So this part right here, this makes it a past tense statement. We'll see this is quite different when we're making future tense statements. So I'll show some examples of this in just a moment. Let's compare this then to the negative form. When we make a negative statement using should in the past, it expresses regret, again that sad feeling. It expresses regret for something that happened. So yes, it's a negative sentence, but this action happened. It was real. So again, to imagine this visually, in the past, something actually did happen. So I used a check mark here. This is a true event, a real event. And we regret, or there's some kind of sad feeling about that thing. So when we make sentences in the negative with this grammar point, we can use subject again, plus should. Here we'll use should not, and then complete this pattern with have and the past participle verb. So the only change here is using not when we make the negative. There's nothing here. So this is the basic kind of statement structure for past tense statements with should. Then I've added here a simple question structure, a simple information question structure here. We can use a WH question. WH means who, what, when, where, why, how, those kinds of things. So we use a WH question with should plus our subject, have, and the past participle verb. So I'll explain a few examples of this in just a moment. With this, I want to continue to the next part over here, which is pronunciation tips. So you've noticed perhaps that should and have and should not have, when people are speaking, these become reduced or these become much shorter. So you'll hear these two used most commonly. We don't really say should have or should not have so clearly. When we're making positive sentences, the most common reduction is this should've, should've. So should've, this is should apostrophe V-E, should've, should've. This should comes from should have. So this have, it's like we drop the ha part and just use the v sound. So should've, should've. To make it even shorter, you'll often hear people use shoulda, shoulda. So this sound is like taking only this a here in have, but it just becomes very short. I shoulda. I shouldna is the negative form of this. So let's continue on. As I've just said, shouldn't have, we contract this should not here. Should not contracts to shouldn't have. But to make it even shorter, we often say shouldna. So positive shoulda, negative shouldna. So let's take a look at some examples that use these patterns. First, let's look at two positive statements. I should have studied more. I should have studied more. And we should have gone to the store. We should have gone to the store. So here we see should is followed by have and then the past participle form of the verb, in this case studied and gone. So this shows us that we have a past tense statement. These statements express regret. So when we're speaking quickly, we probably won't say I should have studied more or we should have gone to the store. I would say I should have studied more and we should have gone to the store. So as I explained, this pronunciation is the most common one, shoulda. I should have studied more. We should have gone to the store. Let's compare this to two negative statements then. She shouldn't have done that. So here I've already reduced this shouldn't. She shouldn't have done that. And you shouldn't have had so much to drink. So again, these two express regret for something that did happen. So in both of these sentences, that something, whatever this is, this was a bad thing. The speaker thinks this was bad. In the second sentence as well, the speaker thinks this was a bad choice. So expressing regret about something that happened. Then, again, as I talked about here, I would reduce this even more. I've got shouldn't in both of these sentences, but in everyday speech, we would probably say she shouldn't have done that, and you shouldn't have had so much to drink. You shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have had so much to drink. So this shouldn't and shoulda, these are key pronunciation points that will help you kind of in your listening and also to help you sound a little more natural. Okay, let's finish this part by looking at two questions then. First, what should we have done differently? What should we have done differently? And where should we have gone? Where should we have gone? So both of these, they maintain, they keep that feeling of regret. When you're using a question like this, you're asking about something it would have been better to do in the past. So it's a question. That means an action happened, yes. And these questions are about improvements to that action. So here, for example, what should we have done differently? What should we have done differently means, for example, the speaker or a group here speaking made a decision, but perhaps it was not the right decision or it was a bad decision. So the speaker is asking, what choice, what should we have done differently is like saying, what do you think would have been better in the past? What should we have done differently? Same thing in the second sentence. Where should we have gone? Where should we have gone? So maybe the speaker went to the wrong location and they're asking for advice in the past. Of course, we cannot change this, but this is actually a common way that we ask for like future advice. So it's recognizing, oh, I made a mistake in the past, so maybe next time I have a similar situation, what do you recommend? But we use this kind of grammar to ask these sorts of questions. Like, okay, in this case, where should I have gone? What should we have done differently? So that you can think about that for the future. So these are situations where you might use questions like these. Okay, with that then, with past tense, let's move on to looking at future uses of should. So let's begin again with positive statements. So when we make a positive statement with should, we're expressing advice actually. So we don't have that regret feeling here. We're expressing advice and the speaker thinks this advice is a good idea. So again, to visualize it, here we're looking at a different point in time. With the past, we were talking about something that finished or something that did not happen. Here, we're talking about an action in the future. So here is my conversation now. When we make a positive statement with should, we're talking about something the speaker thinks is a good idea in the future, an upcoming thing. So I've marked it with a check. To make a positive statement, a simple pattern is your subject plus should, and here the present tense form of your verb. So in past tense, we use this past participle form. Here we're using the present tense form of the verb, so no verb change is necessary here. Now, let's compare this to a negative statement. So a negative statement with should also expresses advice, yes, but the speaker thinks it's a bad idea. This is a bad idea. So positive, good idea, negative, bad idea with should. Then to make a negative statement, an advice statement about the future, we use subject plus should not, and again, the present tense form of the verb. So you'll notice, again, this is very similar to the past tense form. Just keep in mind, we also don't use have. There's no have in present, or rather future forms of this. Okay, then again, let's finish with a simple question pattern too. When we make a question, like an information question, we can begin with this WH question word plus should, our subject, and then the present tense form of the verb. So this is a key point for the difference between these two. We're using different verb forms for future and past tenses. Okay, let's move along then to some pronunciation points here. This one is much shorter than the past tense version, but when we're using should to make a positive statement, there's not really a change, should. Here, though, I would recommend definitely use the reduced shouldn't. It's going to sound more natural than should not. So just a quick point here, try to use this shouldn't sound. Okay, so let's look at some examples that use this. Let's start with some positive expressions. First, you should find a new job. You should find a new job, and he should work harder. He should work harder. So you'll notice here again we have should plus our present tense verb form. So find and work are both present tense verbs. You should find a new job. He should work harder. So the speaker thinks these are good ideas. So these are positive statements, positive advice bits, I guess. Let's compare this to some negative statements then. She shouldn't give up. She shouldn't give up. And you shouldn't eat so much junk food. You shouldn't eat so much junk food. So these two are expressing something the speaker thinks is a bad idea. So in the first sentence, she shouldn't give up. In other words, to give up is bad, or giving up is a bad idea. In the second sentence, you shouldn't eat so much junk food is saying eating a lot of junk food is a bad idea. So here you'll notice maybe too, I've called this future. These are just kind of general life recommendations. I call it the future here because it's like saying, from now on, from this conversation on, this is my advice for you. So maybe, especially in a sentence like this, you shouldn't eat so much junk food. Maybe the speaker is looking at someone eating a lot of junk food and they give this advice. You shouldn't eat so much junk food. Okay, so let's finish then with a couple of questions. So common questions. First one, what should I do? What should I do? A very common advice question. And second, when should we leave? When should we leave? So in native pace, I would say, what should I do? And when should we leave? So these are common questions. These are asking for advice in the future here. So asking, what do you think? In other words, what's your opinion? What should I do? In other words, what do you think is a good idea for me for the future? And in the second sentence, when should we leave? What time do you think is a good time to leave in the future? So we can make these kinds of questions as well, giving, or rather asking for future advice. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to using should for past tense statements and questions and for future tense statements and questions. I hope that it helped you. Of course, if you have any other questions or if there's something else you'd like to know about this grammar point, please feel free to let us know in the comments of this video. Also, if you liked the video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you have not already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the differences between seems, sounds, and looks, especially when using the word like, as in seems like or sounds like or looks like. So let's get started. All right. I first want to talk about seems like. Seems or seems like. We use these in slightly different ways. First, we use seems to make general guesses about things we cannot confirm or things we cannot check. So when I say we cannot confirm, it's like something that we can't test quickly. We can't check our guess right away. So we use seems to make guesses about these kinds of things. Second, we can use seems directly before an adjective or an adverb. Third, we use seems like before a noun phrase. So please keep in mind, seems, no like, comes before an adjective or an adverb. Seems like comes before a noun phrase. So this is a key difference, and we'll see this same pattern with the other words in this lesson too. So let's look at a few examples. First, you seem tired. You seem tired. And she seems nice. She seems nice. These are examples where we use seems with an adjective. So tired and nice are adjectives. We just use seem or seems because we conjugate for this subject here. So when we use it in this way before an adjective or an adverb, we do not use like. Let's look at this other example sentence though. This seems like a nice place to stop for lunch. A nice place to stop for lunch. So here we have this noun phrase. Yes, the word nice is in this noun phrase. There's an adjective in here. But this right here, this is a nice place. So we're talking about the place actually. It's not just the adjective that this is modifying. So we need to use seems like to talk about it. So that place seems like a nice place. We could say it seems nice, sure, but if we're talking about the place, the actual noun, we need to use seems like to describe that. So it seems like a nice place. Okay. So with this in mind, with seems in mind, which we use for general guesses, let's continue on to the next part, which focuses on sounds. So we use sounds and sounds like to make guesses about things based on information we get with our ears. So that means we hear something and we make a guess based on the thing that we heard. So I hear something like from another room, or I hear a sound from outside. I make a guess about the situation based on that sound. So I got the information with my ears. Second point, which is the same as seems, we use sounds directly before an adjective or an adverb again. And here also, sounds without the word like. We don't use like here, just sounds or sound. Third, as we talked about with seems, we use sounds like before a noun phrase. So, some examples of sounds. First, she sounds sick. She sounds sick. So, sick is an adjective. We're using sounds here because our subject is she. She sounds sick. You sound sick is how we would use this. So sick, we use this adjective here because maybe the guess is based on like hearing someone coughing, like that sound. You might think, that person sounds sick. Or maybe they're sneezing, or maybe they just are making some kind of awful sound and you think, that person sounds sick. So that's based on information we get with our ears. Second example sentence, that sounds great. That sounds great. This is a very useful and very common response to an idea or a suggestion. Like, for example, do you want to see a movie tonight? That sounds great. So it's like you heard the suggestion. You got that suggestion with your ears. And your response is, that sounds great. So that's a good idea, in other words. So this is a very common way that we use sounds in this pattern to respond positively to a suggestion. That sounds great. Third, that sounds like a bad idea. That sounds like a bad idea. So this is a good negative response to a suggestion. If someone tells you, like, let's stay up all night drinking energy drinks, you could say, that sounds like a bad idea. So again, this is for information we got with our ears. And in this case, it's a noun phrase, a bad idea. So again, there is an adjective here. The adjective is modifying the noun idea. So that sounds like a bad idea. A bad idea is the noun phrase. Therefore, we have to use sounds like. In this sentence, we use like here. That sounds like a bad idea. So you'll notice sounds like and seems like, or just seems and sounds, follow a similar pattern. But sounds is used for information we get with our ears. Okay, so with this in mind, let's go to the last word for this lesson, looks, or looks like. Looks like is a little different from seems and sounds because there are two different ways that we use the look pattern or the looks like pattern. First, in the same way as we use the other two words, we can use looks for guesses about things based on information we get with our eyes. So sounds is specifically for information we get with our ears. Looks is used for information we get with our eyes. So again, we use this before an adjective or an adverb, just look or looks, and we use looks like before a noun phrase. Some examples of this. First, this hiking trail looks difficult. So here's my adjective, difficult. I've used looks here. So this hiking trail is my subject. It looks difficult. So no like here. So I want to express, like I'm making a guess, I think this is difficult. It looks difficult based on like my visual understanding of it. So if you're standing in front of the hiking trail and you look at the hiking trail and it seems really hard, like I just said seems, that's okay too. If it seems difficult, you can say, wow, this looks difficult. So another key point for this lesson, so I just used seems to talk about using like the word looks. So I mentioned that seems is used for like general guesses about things, yes, and it's okay to use it. There's not a communication problem to use it for something you get with your information you get with your eyes or information you get with your ears. But if you can use looks or sounds to describe that thing or to make your guess, it's probably going to sound a little more natural to use that. So I just said, this hiking trail seems difficult. So that sounds quite general. But if I use this hiking trail looks difficult, it sounds better because the listener understands I can see the trail. So I'm making a guess based on like the information in my eyes, kind of. So I can see it, so that's why I'm saying this. That's the reason for this comment. So if you can, try to use looks or sounds to make your guess. Seems does sound more general. Okay. Another example with looks. So it looks like it's gonna rain. It looks like it's gonna rain. This is a very common, actually, way to express like a weather prediction. So it looks like it's gonna rain, or it looks like it's gonna snow, or it looks like it's gonna clear up. So clear up means become clear. So we use it to talk about the weather, but it looks like it is gonna rain. So it really here is our noun phrase. So looks like is the expression we use. We use like here. But as I mentioned, there are actually two different ways of using looks like. And so this second one you need to be careful of. The pattern that we use here is A looks like B. So this means A is visually similar to B, or that means A has an appearance similar to B. So these two things share an appearance. A looks like B. They look the same. Examples. That cloud looks like a rabbit. So that cloud, A, looks like a rabbit. So that means the two things have the same appearance, or a similar appearance. Another example, your house looks like a mansion. Your house, A, looks like a mansion, B. So the two things have similar appearances. So you can I think, clearly tell, you can pretty clearly understand which meaning of looks like is intended based on the situation. Is the speaker comparing appearances, or is the speaker making a guess? Depending on the sentence, you can usually pretty clearly understand which one the speaker wants to say. Okay, so finally, a couple points here. I did mention, yes, if you can use looks or sounds to describe your guess, please do that. It's very clear. And second, just a general point about the word seem is that we use seem for like very general feelings and experiences. So in my example sentences, I was talking about people's emotions or maybe like my opinion about a place. So it's kind of a very general situation where we use seem. So this is a quick introduction to how to use these words. I hope that it was helpful for you, but if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to practice making a sentence with one of these, please feel free to do so in the comment section of this video. Of course, if you like this lesson, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other things that can help you with your English studies. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.